I started with 36 because I learned, well, I went to university, but with something completely different. I learned biology. I have a degree there.
That is so cool.
I worked as a field biologist, falling around forests at night, looking for bats or recording birds and stuff like that. And that didn't fit the bill quite right. I've always done art, but I didn't know that I could do that as a job. It was always animation. That's something people in the States do or so.
This explains your love for animals.
Yes. I basically stopped working as a biologist because it wasn't quite the thing I liked to do. And it's also quite taxing.
It's not all easy. It doesn't
in the middle of the night, getting up really early, having really weird hours, and having to go into the field in forest and stuff like that. It's quite hard work, and especially if you're on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went away for a year, lived in London just as a waiter, and so discovered Twitch, discovered Adam Phillips there.
Nice.
Who is the effects. He's an effects tutor. He's an effects animator. I knew him from before, basically rediscovered him doing stuff live there and saw it and thought, might give it a go. So I came back to Germany, and for 1 year, I just sat there and did not much else but learning animation and learning using Harmony.
But see, I love to ask this question because the answers is never the same. And I hear it all the time. People are like, I'm too old to learn animation. I'm like, no, you're not.
Certainly not, no. So I had several jobs before I started doing this. I mean, I've always been drawing, and I've always kind of doodled and made art in one shape or another, but I certainly had never animated anything before, and also never used any animation program before.
Fascinating.
And so I just sat myself down for basically a year and kind of learned animation with Adam's effects course. And I think it was also because it was effects. I saw you can do effects as animator as well. I'm not a character person. I really love seeing people animate characters. I just can't do it. I'm really, really bad at drawing characters, as you can see.
I give yourself some credits. You're not so bad.
I don't know. Actually, should maybe do something with this screen here instead of having this kind of robot or whatever it is. But so that was another reason why I think or thought that animation is not something I could do, because you have to be a character animator if you want to animate something.
But that's also such an interesting point, because I've had another FX animator on guest in the past stuff. Agent Panic, super nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also something I try to tell students and just people trying working in the field or whatever. It's okay to not be amazing at everything. It's also okay to be kind of a generalist person, but also if you're doing animation, not everyone is a freaking star at character and ethics. Just like a lot of people are very great at storyboard to make these very dynamic character poses, but less so at timing and animating the thing. So very often you're gonna have animators that are great at animating from a storyboard, but to make the storyboard itself, not so well, not so great. And same things for FX. You're gonna have people that are amazing character animators and not so much FX animator, and the opposite as well. So animation is not all the same. So being an animator doesn't mean you're amazing at all the different sphere of animation, if that makes sense. So that's really nice to hear. And I hope it inspires people. Get inspired.
Yeah, it's definitely something where you have different strength, and especially when it comes between character and effects animation, the way you have to animate is quite different. Where
It's a lot different.
characters, for characters, you do have your character sheets. Characters have a very specific shape. You have to be on model, of course, otherwise it looks really weird when your character all of a sudden looks different and wobbles around weirdly or so. And of course, you have to also move them in a certain way because, well, a body can only move in a certain way, even if you do stretch and squash and do stuff like that.
Like the principles are similar. Like you're still going to have...
the principles are there, yes.
Appeal, like all of these are there. It's just very differently in terms of like how things move. And like the intention is usually different.
It's just that as you can see right now, I mean, it's just fluent shape. It's not something where you have a specific shape that you have to animate, as in like the character walks, the character sits down, the character emotes. For character animators, the emotion is super important. That's something in effects sometimes you have to take that into account, but it's not your main goal. Your main goal is making something that looks real in the world of the animation, real enough that it basically looks part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that the physics are believable, not so much...
Yeah, not so much like real, much like believable. Because if you just trace you guys, it's not gonna cut it. It's gonna look it's great for learning. But
it looks weird if you go and, for example, just trace a video of fire.
Yeah.
And use that for your animation. It will look weirdly off because the timing does not work in an animated world for some reason. That's a big part of animation and effects, is stylizing not only the shape but also the timing of effects. And often for fire, make it slower, more graceful. You want to communicate the shapes more and longer than they are visible in real life. In real life, the shapes of fire, it moves really, really quickly. They're gone from one frame to another.
Yep.
And if you do that in animation, it looks really weird and choppy. And stuff like that you learn as you go, and as you learn your animation style as well. I don't even know. I'm just starting doing a stupid splashy.
I love it. It's got a cool direction. Okay, so do we have questions in the chat right now? No, it's pretty quiet. Okay, so let me just see where we can start. Oh yeah, okay. So when animating hand-drawn effects, what are some common problems that occur in the pipeline, and how do you work around it? I have a good example to inspire, I guess, if you even want ideas.
Sure.
You know when you have to animate effects for someone and they're like, animate magic. And you're like, what kind of magic? Well, like magic. You're like, when your directors are not clear at all, they're like, you just put magic in there. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because in a production, most productions and most people that plan for a production and
like, give me reference
designs do not think, when people think, oh, I want to make an animated movie or short or whatever, I know how the characters will look. I know how the world will look. I know how the backgrounds look, or the house or trees, even anything. Hello, Johnny Speed. Sorry, answering to chat. I'm so used to it. So that's all designed and planned out and things like that. You get references for characters. Of course, you get character sheets and all those things. Effects, most of the time, you get nothing in design. Or if you get something, then it's often very rudimentary. So maybe they thought about, how do we want fire to look?
Or what I've had in the
past, one big
they
explosion, that's what we want, and the rest is kind of, we need, I don't know, we need liquids, we need water, we need tea that someone pours. How is steam supposed to look? That is on a teacup that someone holds.
And sometimes they give you reference, but they're going to give you like 3 different reference of fire. You're like,
That's-
what?
Yeah, that's also something. But I mean, it's most people have no experience in thinking in effects design because they're not effects animators, so it's not their focus. When you tell a story for animation, your
So that's
focus
why
is
we're
the
here.
story, is the characters usually.
Yeah.
That means in productions, it's often, very often the case that the effects department and the effects animators have to come up with designs and suggest certain things to do and know how you can do what and what might fit the style of the production, for example. Just because it's not there yet, so you're making it up as you go. And often in effects also you come across something that is not a standard thing that you have animated before, something weird.
Like alien snot.
For example, alien snot. Or I think I've got in my little reel there, I've put a underwater welding, which is something okay, I mean, it exists, of course, but how does it look? And there it is right now.
Yeah, I see it.
And how do you animate that? And then you have to come up with a design that kind of works.
And the cool thing sometimes is that you don't know how it looks, but also the audience doesn't really. So sometimes it's cool to cheat, just make like it's the balance of what it actually looks like and what the audience thinks it looks like. It's sometimes in animation when we're too realistic, the audience doesn't get it.
Oh no, because it stands out in the world. You always want
that too.
Effects. The main goal of effects is it has to fit with the world. If your effects stand out, you're doing something wrong because they don't fit and people get drawn to something that doesn't fit. It's this kind of uncanny valley situation.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's something a really stylized show and you make something that is super realistic, it just doesn't work. It will look weird. That's part of our job, and also it comes with experience where you. When it comes to how do I simplify the animation itself, like the timing of something like that. The more you do it, the more you get a tool belt of things, shortcuts and tricks, and also where you don't have at the beginning you look at a lot of references, and at some point certain things that you do repeatedly, you don't necessarily need to look at reference for every single thing you do. For example, a little torch or something like that, a torch that gets waved around.
Because as you do it, you kind of, at least for me, you build your like internal library of
exactly
things.
You have an internal library, and you also have a good feeling, or you develop a good feeling of how it should look and how it looks good animated and how it works animated, and that is the most important bit. How does it work within the animation? Does it work within the show, the short, whatever you're working on?
I was talking to a friend who also does FX at work. Oscar, he's amazing. And we were trying to see like what are like the basic FX you kind of need to kind of build your library. Like you were like what
I'm doing right now this year, splashes.
Yeah, we were thinking of splash, something
fires.
Gooey, because water and goo is not the same. But like there's water, there's goo, there's fire, and there's electricity and lasers. There was like some of the most that we thought about. But in the chat, I'm curious, what do you think of some basics FX? Actually, it's more like materials in a way, right?
There's something like fabrics. Often, I mean,
fabric. That's right.
Historically, effects people would even do something like hair,
clothes,
clothes or so. But that's mostly done by the character guys nowadays, just because it's all one package basically. But sometimes you do stuff like that, like fabric, like a curtain on the background. Smoke, yep. What's that? Twilight style. That's correct. Smoke is an important thing, definitely. Yeah. Smoke columns or steam rising from something is something that is animated really, really often.
Yeah, because smoke and explosions, not the same.
Not the same. No, definitely not the same. Rolling smoke and an explosion can be hugely different.
I love FX.
I mean, I agree. And I do really like it.
I used to be so scared though of FX. In my first job, when I was on a Big Hero 6, the series, there was so many FX, and we did not have an FX department, but that's what I was kind of used to. So when I remember at first I delivered my scene, and I was like, okay, it's done. I deliver it, and then my boss was like, oh, you did animate the fire and smoke. I'm like, oh yeah, that's for the effect department. He's like, what effects department? I was like, oh frick. And he was like, yeah, you have to do it. And I was like, fuck, I don't know how to animate FX. I panicked. But I did it, and I discovered a new love for that medium. So I really like to animate FX on these series.
Yeah, it's I mean,
you just have to try
it's
it.
Different, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm basically what I'm doing here. It's straight to clean. The timing will probably be quite off when we look at this in motion, because I'm not spending too much brain juice on it right now.
I think the thing with FX that people have to be aware when they get into it is you really, really have to love to draw. Like, I like to draw. I don't love to draw. Like, if I have the choice to animate something or go outside and take a walk in the forest, I will go outside and take a walk. But people will stay in and draw for hours and hours. So, like, make sure that you know what you're getting into, because there is a lot of drawing involved.
Especially in 2D effects, because there is shortcuts, but
there is 100%.
A lot of it is still line mileage. We do have a massive amount of line mileage depending on what effects you're doing. Like if you have 3 layers of fire, or just fire, and anything that has complicated forms and shapes, is just, every single drawing takes quite a long time to do, and then you have to, of course, clean it up and make sure that the timing is right and that it flows nicely. That means you're doing a lot as well.
Yep. Oh, there's some. I know we have our own questions, but there is some pretty nice one in the chat.
Sure.
So, Helepto asks, for stuff like magic, what would you say is a good place to look for that? Is there certain keywords that help with finding FX animation references, besides, specifically writing FX fire animation? Do you have any cool places to look for?
In general, I would say, when it comes to, or my personal philosophy when it comes to looking for reference, is I always try to find something from real life first. Either I know something that I can look up in actual real life, or try to find video footage of it or so, before I go and look at something that's already been animated, unless I'm asked to basically emulate a very specific style, where someone says, I want you to animate this explosion exactly like this explosion in this piece of animation. Then, of course, you take that as a reference. But as soon as it's, I need a big smoking gun, I don't know. Okay, I go and look at, first, the most direct approach, Google smoking gun video or something like that, or look on YouTube or so and find if there's something like that. Or I try to think, what am I aiming at when it's something more like magic? So
it's like, what element magic is it?
What type of magic
fire?
is it? Is it an elemental magic, or is it something like a transformation? And then I can think about, okay, what kind of transformation is it? Is it like a big poof, a cloud that poofs and the character changes, or whatever changes? Is it something where the thing I'm changing melts and gets rebuilt? For example, it melts and gets rebuilt at something else. Could be something like that. Is it like sparks and fire, or sparkles that swirl around? Is it something that gets shot in a direction? Is it like an attack kind of magic thing, where you shoot something? Does that look like maybe like a flamethrower or so? Then I can look at the flamethrower and make that combine that with a stream of sparkles, for example.
I think what's important
so-
too is to know like what it's going to look like, kind of like in render. So if you can draw just one frame of it, that's already a big help.
Yes, and you if you don't have a reference specifically that asks for a certain style or something like that, you go like that. You do a design and you think about what kind of magic am I having here? For that's something we do a lot for the Hell of a Boss show, actually, because it's placed in hell. There's a lot of magical stuff going on. Some of the characters have literally magical abilities. You can see a couple of the examples I have there are kind of an appearance poof of a character. That's one of his magic abilities. We made it so that each different demon has a slightly different design to their magic, so you can even identify who does what just by the colors, for example. You can do that. Then you have different fires, and if this character conjures fire, it looks like that, and if the other character conjures fire, it is kind of black or green or something like that. So with magic, it completely depends on what type of magic, basically. If it's something like Avatar, it's basically you animate an element in the show Avatar. So you animate water, but water gets to move basically like smoke, because they can draw it around by their motions. That's an approach. So you take one element and animate it so that it moves and behaves like something else that is not inherent to it, which already makes it magical because it doesn't behave the way it should behave, like, I don't know, water that floats around.
But at the same time, it doesn't have a mind of its own. It's being like influenced by the person, but it's not like as if the water was because sometimes you can see like sprites, like the water is going to turn into like a rabbit that runs, and it's like, yeah, but then
yeah, that's then where you animate it more like a character, or you have like the Avatar style. Your water reacts to the motions of the characters, and that's also a really interesting challenge for effects animation. I really like doing that when I have effects that have to interact with either something that happens in the background or with a character. So a character's like, there's an example in my video. I can just refer to my own videos.
Yeah,
that's great.
Let's go.
But you can see Fizzaroli reaching out, and his arm is all burning and bloodied and so on. And that is, I have to follow the arm. The fire has to react. It still burns off the arm, but it has to react to that motion. And that's really interesting because on one side, you have to follow the motion of the character. And on the other side, you have to think about, okay, how does that motion influences the effect that I'm animating? So the fire that gets dragged along, but the bits that are already rising, they, of course, still keep rising. Is there maybe some air turbulence going on that happens through that motion that I want to take into account and maybe show through how the flames behave? So that's a lot of things that, as an effects animator, you think about and you take into account, and then also decide, do I need that, or can I simplify some of that? Because super high realism might take a long time. That is not always in the budget of productions.
And that is not always necessary.
And it's also not always necessary. It's there is enough opportunity to find shortcuts where you can say, okay, this is too complicated. I can simplify it a lot because people won't even see this much detail for a 1 second shot. I just threw my stylus away.
Oh, I do that all the time.
But yeah, you can totally when you know in a scene where you have characters acting, so a background, an effect, an incidental effect might just sit in the background. For example, I don't know, let's say.
But for things that sits in the background like that, oftentimes we can rely on like banked animation. Like if she animated a fire in another scene, like a torch.
Yeah, that's
you can
it's
just
a
go
classic.
get it.
It's a classic example. You have a fire, say a fire in a fireplace or something. It sits in the background. Something happens in front of it. There's characters doing stuff, talking. They walk past it. The camera pans past it. Whatever. So in a situation like that, you work by having a nice looped animation of that fire, and you basically reuse it whenever you see that fireplace.
And in Harmony, the cool thing is that you can even take an FX and you can slap a deformer on it and just have the same fire actually look different because you just deformed it with a deformer. So that's a cool thing too.
You can do that when you have something like torches and so on. You want to place different torches and you have a set of reusable loops. And you want to make them look slightly different or fit into different situations. You can make use of those deformers to make them look less like just a repetition. And that's all just to save time. So you can spend time on the bigger effects where it's more important that you actually spend time on it and make them look great. But stuff like that, incidental like that in the background.
You need to choose your battles.
It looks good. It doesn't need to be animated by hand every single shot if it's good enough to repeat the same one for something small like that. You want to have your time for do the nice and big stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. We went on so many tangents. That's great.
Yeah, welcome to whenever I stream, because that's my streams in a nutshell.
Okay, what are some non-animation related skill and knowledge that you might use when you do FX animation?
That I use. I mean, with having studied biology, I do have some quite firm grasp on physics principles, because studies of physics, at least basics, is part of studying biology.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that can help, especially for effects. Of course, you mostly animate physical phenomena. Even if it's something like magic, it still has to follow certain physics to make it look believable. An example is when you animate a fire, I don't know, whatever, you have a nice fire, and all your fire rises. Most people know that. All the bits rise up. And while the fire burns, it pulls in air and makes little air turbulences, which then informs this shape, which is why you get these shapes where fire doesn't do those little holes that are basically cutting out of a flame like this. I don't even know why I'm flipping here. But this is basically cooler air from the outside that gets drawn in because the hot air of the incandescent flame rises up quicker than the outside air. And that is how you get these very specific flame-like motions.
That makes a lot of sense.
And knowing things like that basically helps. With animation and effects animation, a lot of it is knowing about flow and air currents, because that's something that basically influences most effects that you animate, like fire, smoke, how air flows informs how smoke moves. Is it hot or cold? Hot rises, cold flows down. Water flow. Have you got a water that gets poured out somewhere? Like a little water stream, and then you...
People are so happy about the stream in the chat, so I'm just letting you know. We're getting nice comments. They're like, oh, that's so useful. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So it's great. But yeah, like just like any other kind of animation, there's so many like soft skills that are just not drawing that are very useful.
Yeah, basically, for effects, it's a lot of physics. You don't have to study it as such, but if you have a rough idea what happens in a certain effect, that helps you. It helps you also construct it and make it look believable, even without having to look at a specific reference every single time, because you know how it behaves in principle and how it comes to be the way it is. Then
And
you
like,
can
it's not
basically
about taking like
construct it.
a physics class in university. It's more like, I think like the advice that I could give would be like, ethics is more than just looking at it. To me, at least, it helped a lot reading about it, or like just like having someone explain me how it works. Like, just like you said, like the fire goes up, what is cold usually goes down.
Mhm.
And I think there was a book. Yeah, it's called Elemental Magic. There's like two of them. And I remember when I was mentoring people, I was telling them, yeah, you should take a look at this book. It's pretty cool, years ago. And then I remember students being like, it's all text. I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, nah, I just want to see the fire and dragon. I'm like, well, the book explains to you the physics of fire.
Yeah,
But
the
like,
principles are still the same.
yeah, it was like a fire physics for dumb, for dummies. Right. And but no, they didn't want to read. I was like, sorry to break it to you, but reading is pretty useful when you're doing animation.
Reading, and something that is also really useful when you do effects stuff is, what am I doing? Is looking at the slow-mo guys. Not
Oh, yeah.
affiliated or anything, but they are basically the Bible for all effects animators. Know those guys and their videos, because they
Yep.
basically show you in detail how these things happen and gives you a lot of stuff that you usually don't see because it happens too fast.
But I like them because they
Muzzle
also
fire
give
of a gun or
explanation.
something like that. They explain a lot in.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, they're also very entertaining, those videos, but for effects animation specifically, I mean, you have to be careful because they show you much, 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 much more than you can see with the naked eye. And what we want to show in animation is mostly what you would see with the naked eye. So you can dismiss some of that extreme time dilation and then concentrate on, okay, yeah, I know what happens, and now I have to basically translate it back down to,
but that's why,
how much of that can I see when it just happens in real life? It's like a second when glass shatters. But it shows you they have some really cool videos where stuff breaks.
But with just like with any kind of animation, I always tell people to be like, if they're looking for reference, I usually advise against looking like just at slow motion, not just for FX, but also like for character animation, right? Because like you said, yeah, it's good to understand.
Mhm.
But guys, you like we told you many times in this video before, slow-mo is just one part of the learning. There's also other things you have to take a look at, like to understand the timing and everything. But slow-mo, I love to look at it for like to understand like the direction and how things exist.
Exactly. Slow-mo is really interesting also when you see how shapes develop and how like water, when water, like I'm doing here, when water falls in on itself, how do those shapes contract, and how do you get all the little droplets and all those little strings, and so where do they come from? And the slow motion image just shows you that more easily. But yeah, definitely the timing, of course, you can't work unless you're actually animating a slow motion shot, which is absolute pain in the behind, because it's even more frames. It's completely nuts.
Yeah, animating slow-mo effects is the reason I actually learned the morphing tool at one point, because it was like, dude, there's so much.
The morphing tool for stuff like ripples, for example, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because I just can't be bothered to basically draw 50 frames of ripple.
Me neither. Me neither.
And if you tweak them enough, you can get away with a lot of morphing tool. Ooh, you know what? Since I have you here, how many does it have a function where you can No, you can put it on 2s. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking something else. What was that? Because something popped up in that regard, but
I mean, they give it to you on once, and you have to manually go remove 1 frame every 2 frame, but I'll take
Sorry?
it.
Sorry?
It gives it to you on once, but you can't put it on 2s after. It's just a bit.
Oh yeah, you
process.
totally go into the morph into the morphing of the here into that thing here. Advanced there, morphing velocity. Yeah. Make it into Bezier and then put it on 2s.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it now because I don't have anything morphing right now. Actually, why not we do that? Let's do it. Doesn't matter what it's called. Let's do a stupid little. I should be able to draw. Come on. Very beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Let's put that back here. And then, yeah, these would be so many frames that I absolutely do not want to paint. From this one to this one, and all the way at the back here, 60 frames of slow-moving ripple. Totally not gonna in between those.
Never.
Maybe F5. There we go. And then I put a morph on that. Morphing. It's I have to lead it a bit because it looks odd, but that's fine. Put our little hints. Where are my hints? Do I have shape hints? Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've used them, but yeah, they're pretty useful.
Yeah, for me too. I think the last time I used them was on the music video, on the
when they're in space.
Look My Way one. Because I literally did this there for the water ripples, for some of the water ripples. Because I wanted to spend time on the big water splash thing, because that was a sexy money shot.
Oh yeah, it was.
So I was like, oh no, I'm not spending days and days just in betweening ripples. So let me see if that works already. Yep, does work. Cool. There, super slow. And now I can go in and do the velocity. Velocity. Keyframe.
Work
keyframe.
smarter, not harder.
And put that on a. Can even make it faster at the beginning and slower towards the end. How about that? How does it look? Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And then we go like this. Start, stop is 60, no? 60, and then we put that up on 2s, apply, okay, and now it's on 2s. Blub, 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 blub. Wonderful. And you've drawn exactly 2 images.
It's amazing.
So yeah, that's a really, really useful trick. I try not to overuse it because morphing tool, it is dumb. So sometimes you have to fix it so much that it can be quicker to just draw it.
Yeah, I use it for easy, specific things. Like,
something like
very
this, where
slow,
it's really straightforward, where the tool cannot get confused. It's easy enough to just. That was literally what was that? Not even 5 minutes to make this.
Yep.
And then
it would have taken so long by hand. Oh my god.
Yeah, and you can do the same again, or the only thing was when you put it when you create drawings, you have to basically delete every second one and put them onto it.
That's what I said. It's a bit of a manual process, but I'll take it.
True. To be fair, though, when you render it into PNGs to deliver, it will be rendered into ones back anyway, so you can basically just leave them.
Yep. Depends on the style.
Yep. Sorry, that was kind of deep dive now.
Yeah, but that's what we're here for.
Very, very specific use case.
That's what we're here for. Okay, so look at the chat. Someone is asking, are there things you want to avoid animating that are part of real images, like not drawing every singular teeth since they're not in focus? That's a hard question because it's so vague. Like there's so many things.
I mean, something like we just showed, basically,
Mhm.
when it's literally just a ripple on a water surface. Otherwise, I would have to go in and draw every single one of these frames, and it's very boring. It's the literal same shape every frame, and it's just very time intensive. You spend a lot of time on it, and you don't see a lot interesting things happen. So for me, it's mostly stuff like that. When it gets very super repetitive, as in I'm a control freak. I like to control elements. That's why I like effects. It suits me. I can control how this thing behaves. That's also why I like 2D effects as opposed to generating them for 3D, where you do the same thing, but you
Yeah, these
have
are
to tweak
so different.
values and gravity and stuff like that a lot to try make them do what you want instead of just drawing it the way you want it.
I remember that. I used to be a 3D animator.
And the thing is, I'm someone who uses the particle effects in Harmony quite extensively.
They're a lifesaver for some
such
things.
a useful tool, especially for effects. When they're used in the right way, when you know when to use them, how to use them, and also when not to use them. And they are fun to figure out, to make something work, to get it to work when it works. They are not fun if you have to sit there for ages and just tweak little values and see, oh, it's still not doing what I want, and then tweak another value, it's still not doing what I want, and it takes forever, and it's, in the meantime, I could have drawn it.
Yep, exactly.
So they do definitely have their downsides as well. But when it comes to weather, I'm the weather person for all productions I've worked on. I made snow and clouds. I made what did I make? Did I make rain? I didn't make snow. I made snow and Cuphead. I made snow. When you see on Hello
so much
you see snow, you
clouds.
see rain, you see any sort of weather happening that is just constantly going on in the background. It's most likely that I've filled all those shots with those stupid effects. Which is you set up your effect for shots with directions for rain or snow when you have wind and so on in there as well. And then you plonk them in every single shot you need them. That's why you save the time instead of having to animate or even reuse them by photo or copy pasting different layers. So for something like weather, particles are a great tool. And I always want kind of more control over them as well.
Yep. So do you aside from like using the morph tool or the particle tools, do you have any other tricks to cut corners when you're doing effects?
I mean, that's basically the main cutting corner tricks, really.
Crap, I was
and also because
it's the only one I know too.
Yeah.
Wait, we forgot one though. There's a trick that I've used so many times in TV animations because the timing was so short. To do like these classic, like let's say there was like an explosion and then there's smoke going up, like just like outward going smoke. Instead of having to draw it or like fight the morphing tool, one very popular trick we did is we have like one, like let's say we have like one rectangle that is fully drawn, fully filled with paint, and then you just draw like two different like wavy shapes and you slap them on pegs and you just make them go up, and this like masks or cuts the original rectangle. So like you can use pegs to do invert mask to create some very, 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 very cheap effects.
Oh, I think I know what you mean. You have a rectangle and you have a shape that does this and you move that up.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And then basically another one here.
Oh yeah, this for very flat 2D effects is so fast. It's disgustingly fast.
Right, yes. That's actually
Yeah.
something I haven't used in a long time, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind.
you've
that
been
you
working
can
on
cut
very,
out stuff and animate the cutout instead of animate the thing.
Yeah, but you've been working on very like high quality shots in production. Like I'm talking about like garbage scenes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh,
We had like
whatever the show
yeah.
basically demands, you do whatever work you can in the time given, basically. And also within the style given, if the style is super, super simple and super, super flat, then even if you have more time, you do that because that's exactly the look you want.
Yep. And I think the other trick I have, which is not always recommended because it can turn very heavy, but I've seen some use of it where I worked on something for like a few YouTube people, so like the budget was not very high, but they kept changing their minds. At first, they're like they wanted not smoke, but like I don't know what the word for it is in English. It's smoke that doesn't go up. It's smoke. It's heavy smoke that goes toward the ground.
Mist. It's called mist.
Exactly.
When you have cold mist that flows over something and flows downward like this, and maybe collects on the ground, and it flows this way. You have a I don't know, a cauldron, and there's
that's it.
Cold steam flowing out of it.
So at first I was supposed to animate something with like steam like this, but I kind of started coming was like these people don't know what they want. So what I did is I animated straight, like on the straight line, just like some kind of smoke, because if it goes up or down minimally, it's gonna look kind of the same. But I was like, I'll animate just flat, and I put a deformer on it to make it go down or up, like to kind of angle it, because it was magic things.
Totally.
So I did this, but let it be known, it is not recommended because it is freaking heavy, because a deformer is recalculated each time the image under it changes. So
we tried to do that with lava in Cuphead a couple of times, having lava flow down, so you animate it and it flows down over a shape, so that deforms it a little bit, so it follows a shape. But we did that with the free deformer point things.
Yep.
Those things are incredibly heavy. You have only 4 or 5 in your shot, and it takes forever to
But it's still faster usually than drawing it yourself. So I'm like, I'll take it.
If it's a shot that takes, or that has a duration of, I don't know, 50 frames, 100 frames, 200 frames long, and you want just something that flows really slowly. If you want to animate that, you have to animate, or you draw your in-between super, super close. Yeah, no, deformers.
Exactly. So, it's a give or take, but, I had to say the warning. It is heavier, so don't overdo it.
That's also something where you, as the effects animator and the one who knows their tools, i.e. in this case, Harmony, or the program you're working with, you have a rough idea which is easier, faster, or the right thing to do in a certain situation. So yeah, I've got a really long shot, and it needs a really slow moving effect that is, I know how I can simplify it. I don't have to animate it by hand every single frame. Then I can find those workarounds and use them. That's basically part of the job. Knowing them, knowing those shortcuts, and knowing when to apply them and when not to apply them. When I could try doing that here, but it will just look weird and off and automated. That's something you always want to avoid if you work in 2D animation. It's like, even if you use tricks like that and automation tools like that, it shouldn't be super visible that you use them.
Yep.
Because then we run again in the same problem with the uncanny valley situation. So it looks off. Something super fluent and super, super smooth within a 2D world often looks just off because it clashes with everything else that's going on in there.
I agree. Very interesting, very interesting.
And you can't...
we only have 5 minutes left. What the heck?
Oh, wow.
Time goes by so fast.
Oh, no.
I know, right? So sad.
Didn't even... I mean, I didn't pay attention. This is all super flowy now, so this would be...
So beautiful.
It's way too flowy, so that needs to be all the way back on once, I guess. Oops.
Yep. I think we have time for like maybe one more thing. Oh yeah. Do you sometimes composite your own effects?
Oh, all the time.
Right. I mean,
It's one of my
because I know the answer.
It's one of my specialities to use the node library and all these little blurs and glows and all the
It's
time.
so fun.
I do that all the... I mean, we do a lot of basically pre-comping our effects, especially when you need something where the compositing animates with your effect. Say you have a smoke cloud that grows and dissipates, and as it dissipates, it gets more and more blurry to help the dissipation out. That's something where we often do basically a pre-comp pass in the FX animation. And sometimes you want to do a sort of comp pass to show it with the director or whoever decides to approve a shot or not, to give them an idea how the effect will look finished. Because, again, they are not necessarily people who are used to looking at effects in their raw stage. Even people that work in animation, animators, Sergio Pablos himself, he was not used to look at effects in their raw stage. So sometimes if you would show him just the raw shapes, he would go, nah, that's not quite what I want. And then you do a
You add a
pass for the fire.
transparency node. It's like perfect.
Put some glow on, put some nice blur on to make the flames look less kind of cut outy. And he would go, oh yeah, that looks good. So depending who you show it to, it often makes sense to not spend hours and hours on it, and also having in the back of your mind, because you do usually have to give it to the comp department and they don't want all those compositing effects already baked in. They want to be able to change them and put their own on. But being able to do those things in harmony and also seeing what happens if you do them is so useful for effects stuff. To just be able to just quickly slap a glow on something is so useful.
But that's important also, not just because there's so many people in the world. And sometimes the question I get is like, how do I like stand out to something? If you want to do effects, I 100% am sure if you take the time to learn a bit about compositing, it's going to help you a whole lot. Not because you're going to composite maybe in the actual show, but at least like you have the sensitivity of knowing how it could be made. So.
Yes, and also it's really a good thing to know for effects animator to know how compositing works, because that can inform how you yourself construct them.
Exactly.
And how you make them, how you structure them, how you divide your layers, for example, when you work on something, to make it, again, easier for the follow-up department, which is compositing, to then take your effects and take the different layers of your effects and put them into the shot and make it all one thing.
Because on production that I've worked on, like, you could see, like, yes, some people just don't care, but some people just didn't know. But, like, they would give you effects and it would be like
everything in one layer.
Mess. Yeah. Which is not so bad, because for harmony you can use like the color selectors, like select colors, like they're like things not separated like they should.
It can be a pain, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, and stuff like that. I mean, you can literally, this is one little glow thing that I can put in here and then just have an idea. Oh, look, this is how it can look when it glows. I mean, there's absolutely no background in here now and so on, but let's make one. Oops. Like quickly.
And as you finish
Are you
this, I'm
feeling
just
on
going to
it?
thank everybody for coming to this lovely stream. It was super nice. We get some very sweet questions. And I want to thank you also for coming to do this stream with us. This was super fun.
Sure. You're very welcome. I didn't really finish any animation.
I mean, it's
as
okay.
that.
We were talking.
Kind of a splash, not really. Yeah, see, that's something where I would have to go back in and see, look at the timing and so, because it's off. But the rough idea is there. And we have a beautiful ripple doing its thing over there. How do you overlay the effects onto the animation? That's something. I mean, you get a shot when you work on a production. You get a shot that usually already has something like the rough animation of the characters in or so, depending if you need them or not, or the backgrounds, layouts, and stuff like that. And then you work on top of that. You make your own layers and work on top. And then you deliver your layers, your effects layers separately. You render them out, often divided into separate sub-layers, depending on how your effects are designed. And those rendered out image sequences, usually it's PNG sequences, then get delivered to the compositing department. And the compositing department, they take all the different bits. They take the backgrounds, they take the character animation, several characters, if there's several characters, all the other elements that need to go in, take your effects, put it all together in one shot and composite it. So they do color adjustments, they put glows on there, they put cinematic effects on there. That's all the things they then do and put it all together. But you can, I mean, if you work on your own project, you do that yourself. But it's the same process, only that you don't give it someone else. You take all your little elements yourself and put them all together.
Yep. So, again, thank you so much. It was super fun. Do you have any last things you want to share to the people?
Saying hello to Seshima as well. Hi, Seshi. PG sync with. Yes, you just render it out. I mean, that's literally what any animation software does. It renders stuff and
Animate Sam is right. He says, as a Toon rigger, I always recommend other artists to learn a bit more about other departments, especially so. Yeah,
definitely know the pipeline and have an idea of what people do. In other departments, especially because, I mean, it's a team effort. Every animation is. So you get the layout from the layout department, from the layout person. You get backgrounds from the background person. You get the character animation from the character person. Sometimes stuff has to be adjusted. Then it's great that if you know who to ask for to adjust certain things that you need. And also, when it goes down the line, who will get your stuff and who will then have to work with it, and what do they need to best work with it to make it as easy as possible for them. Absolutely agree.
All right, so I guess that's it for today. We're going to see you guys in next year.
Oh yeah, next year. That's soon, in a couple of weeks, in fact.
So don't forget, if you want to learn more, check out the Toon website. We have so many links in the chats. And I will wish you a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.